This is the 7th episode of the Bluegrass Blues podcast. I'm Jesse.
And I'm Amy.
Well, this week we're going to talk about healthcare, partly because I was in the hospital last week and it was a very weird experience. The basic trend was that on Wednesday I was just out of it. I was told I woke up and that I was just making no sense at all, just not communicating. And I was told that I was actually taken downstairs to an ambulance. I don't remember any of this. All I know is that I went to bed on Tuesday and I woke up on Thursday. And I was in a hospital bed, had no idea how I'd gotten there, had no idea why I was there. But the thing about being in hospitals is that, you're in bed all the time. You're dependent on the nurses, and the nurses and doctors, they were very good. They were on top of everything. The only problem was no one can tell me what went wrong. I was, like I said, I was incommunicative. They thought it was a stroke, but it wasn't a stroke. I was pretty lucid by Saturday. I could talk and I knew where I was and I was ready to go home, but again, they just never figured out what had happened in that 2-day span. And it's kind of the second time I've been hospitalized. I was in the hospital in DC once because I had this pain in my chest, but it wasn't a heart attack, and they weren't able to determine what that was. So the point here is that healthcare is very important to people. I know that I'm fortunate in that I'm on Medicare and I have all the supplemental insurance that I need. But there is the recent developments with the big bullshit budget bill is that a lot of people are going to lose their health care coverage. And I was just looking into certain things. I wanted to go by congressional district, if that's okay with you, and talk about who voted for the bill. Well, let's go to the chase. There were 2 Republicans in Kentucky who voted against the bill. That was Rand Paul, and that was Tom Massey. Massey's in the 4th congressional district, right next to Louisville. But I wanted to see, I know that all the other Republicans in the state voted against it, and the only Democrat in the state in Congress, Morgan McGarvey, voted for it. Voted against it, and Republicans voted for it.
Right.
But it's just cutting through each of these listings. I'm looking at where did I get this information from? But in the 1st congressional district, that's James Comer, and there were 235,000 people covered by Medicaid, or 32.4% of the district. And Comer won his election with 75% of the vote. In the 2nd congressional district, that's Brett Guthrie, 234,000 people are covered by Medicaid, or 30%, or almost 31% of the district. And Guthrie won his election by 73%. In the 5th congressional district, Hal Rogers, who has, 316,000 people are covered by Medicaid in Hal Rogers' district. That's 44%. And he won the district by 100%. He got every vote in the last election. But his district has the 5th highest poverty rate in the nation.
Right.
And
that's a very Appalachian community.
Yeah,
very poor.
Yeah, and the 6th congressional district is Andy Barr. That's around Lexington. Almost 200,000 people are covered by Medicaid there, and that's 26% of the district. Or, the thing that gets me is that these are very poor districts. They overwhelmingly voted for the people who are hurting them.
Yeah.
And I have to wonder what's going to happen in the next election cycle, because as we've discussed many times on this podcast, the Republicans aren't holding town hall meetings, so they don't want to hear what the constituents have to say.
Plus, they're delaying this. They're delaying the effects of all this until after the midterms.
But people will know. People know that they're going to lose their...
How do people know that? How do they know it? How do they find out their news?
Well, they find out from Fox and places like that, or the Trump voter votes for that. But there are going to be instances where hospitals are going to close. They're going to have to close because the funding won't be there. And there are things happening now in the administration that will make health a huge issue in the next couple of years. Like we discussed earlier this week, that the measles are back.
Right.
The measles were gone, and they're
Right.
back because you have this insane health secretary who thinks that vaccines are the causes of just weird diseases that they don't cause. He's completely gutted the people who are doing the research. The administration itself is gutting funds to universities because of their political stand, which like has it's just we're in the process of just completely being dismantled as a country by these guys.
And to be very clear, 1.2 million Kentuckians are probably going to lose their health insurance, and a lot of those are kids. But again, they're not going to lose their health insurance until after the midterms. But I'll tell you what's happening now is Kentucky faces the nation's highest number of rural hospitals at risk of closure. So what's going to happen is they can't plan. The hospitals aren't going to be able to plan for future funds. So they are going to start.
Well, they have to dismantle because
Right.
they have no funding.
Right.
And you know, if you're in a poor district like what was it like what was I saying had the worst district, the Hal Rogers. If you're in Hal
The
Rogers
fifth.
district and you are about to lose you're going to lose your Medicaid, you're in the highest poverty area of the state, and you're going to lose your hospital. Well, I guess it won't matter because you won't be alive to vote in the next election. I'm sure he's looking at it. Maybe he's looking at it that way. Maybe he's just a ghoul, or maybe all the Republicans who have voted for this are ghouls.
I just want to be clear, too, that we're talking about children and families, women, especially those of reproductive age, living in small towns and rural areas, people with disabilities, low income seniors on Medicare, veterans, and legal immigrants, as well as victims of domestic abuse. And what else is going to happen is these work reporting requirements. A lot of the people that are on Medicaid are working already, but now they're not going to be able to navigate red tape. So a lot of them are going to be projected to be uninsured because of the red tape. And then the other thing is we're going to have co-payments now, up to $35 per visit. So now we're going to see a resurgence of medical debt, which Medicaid expansion was intended to help people avoid.
Right. And the thing is that, again, all of these things that are happening, this has been Trump's and the Republicans' effort to undo Obamacare. That's what it comes down to. And I'm going to say it's a racist action that they're doing because they don't want the black guy to get credit for anything. They've been against Obamacare ever since it got passed. They gave it the name Obamacare, deceiving people into thinking that, that the Affordable Care Act was something else that wasn't going to be touched, but Obamacare was going to be eliminated.
I don't think Trump would have become president had we not had a black man as president prior.
Well, Trump made it so that he fired the racism that was going on because of the whole birth certificate issue. You know, that was pure racism. That Obama was born in Hawaii. He was born in Hawaii. That's an American state. He's an American citizen. There's no question about it. Everyone knows it. But Trump then decided that this is going to be an issue that I can harp on for the next 4 years.
So the platform is racism and then blatant sexism because of Hillary's emails, quote, emails.
Right. Well, and also the lack of responsibility on the part of the major media outlets to the desire to equivocate whatever Trump did with whatever Hillary did, even though Trump was committing crimes. He was just flat out committing crimes. And Hillary was doing policy. And, you know, policy isn't exciting. People don't like to hear about it. They just want things to get done. But when you have someone who's essentially just appealing to the reptilian brain of his followers, where, you know, everything is just us against them. Um, they're bad. I'm good. He's the words that they use. He's saying exactly what I'm thinking. It's that kind of thing where he reinforced the racism that was out there.
Right.
And I think back in the days when, whenever someone would say something about race, someone else would say, "Why do you have to make everything about race?" And the thing is, everything has now become about race.
Right.
It's about immigration. It's about how do you treat people, who's going to stay in the country, who's going to do jobs, what kind of jobs are out there. Black jobs was definitely a racist statement by Trump, because I don't know why. I knew what he was saying, and the farmers in the world knew what he was saying, that he was going to get rid of the immigrants so black people would go back in the fields and, pick the crops and chop the cotton and do all the farm work that were the quote unquote black jobs.
Right.
So, that's racist. But again, he was appealing to the racism that was pervasive in the country.
Right.
And he won with it. So
he did. And let's go back to health outcomes, because this big, horrible, what did you call it? Big bullshit budget bill.
Bullshit bill.
So another social determinant of health, of course, is food security, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the Kentucky Center for Economic Policy estimates that 50,000 Kentuckians will now be at risk of losing their SNAP benefits. It used to be called food stamps.
Mm-hmm.
And this is at a time when about 16% of Kentuckians are already considered food insecure. And the Commonwealth of Kentucky is among the 10 hungriest states, right? So we're going to see people lose or see a decrease in benefits. Some schools are probably not going to be able to continue offering free meals to all students. Food banks are going to have stricter restrictions on who can seek their assistance, etc. So, again, so now we've got people that are not going to have health care, and they're not going to have food. Not just nutritious food, like food.
Right, yeah.
Starvation. We're
Right.
talking starvation in Kentucky.
And that also carries on to the healthcare aspect, because when you don't have food, you have to go to the hospital because you're not getting the nutrients you need to survive.
Right, and then
So-
we're not going to have the rural hospitals because
Right.
they're not
They're going to be
being funded.
closed.
Yeah.
So, it's just, I cannot imagine why this bill passed, other than, there is a reason why this passed, and it's because the cuts in the benefits will go back to the top 1% of earners.
Right.
It's if you're a top 1% of the earner in the country, you earn $500,000 or more per year in Kentucky. And that's equal to the total proposed cuts to Medicaid and food assistance in what they'll get back in those tax cuts. So, it's another example of, it's a reverse Robin Hood.
Right.
It's the rob from the poor and give to the rich.
Well, and the other thing is the dumbing down of America, which we've been seeing for decades. But right now, there's now an $87 million federal education funding freeze that is leaving all of the Kentucky school districts in bad situations. The $87 million in federal funds for Kentucky was approved by Congress and signed by Trump in March of 2025. But then on June 30th, the U.S. Department of Education said the funds were being frozen while under review. And so our school districts, while they're working this summer to plan for the next year, are in complete disarray. Mm-hmm. And they're going to be losing millions of dollars for instruction and student support, academic enrichment, etc. So not only are we going to continue to get sicker, and we're going to get poorer, and we're going to get dumber.
Right. But the Republicans, I believe, really feel that a dumb constituent is the best constituent to have, because if people don't know what's going on, they're not going to vote against it, and they're going to vote against their interest, which is what's happened in this past election. I look at the numbers, and what was it, Hal Rogers won by 100% of the vote.
Right.
And he's in the poorest district, and he has screwed over his constituents.
He's not only screwing them over, he's going to his constituents.
Right. Yeah. And,
They're going to die.
yeah. Well, I guess this is not a good transition, but I'm going to do it anyway. This raises a question of why Kentucky Democrats can't do anything to stop this. You know, I've complained many times about our congressman, who I call Morgan McGreevy, and I know his name is Morgan McGarvey. It's for those who think I'm just not being aware of it, but he should be out, and I've said this before, he should be out in the districts, like in Rogers' district and in Andy Barr's district and in Brett Guthrie's district, and doing the town hall meetings that people aren't doing, representing their constituents. Because, you know, I've seen stories about, they do it in California, and a Democrat will go into a Republican district and get a standing ovation.
I think our Democratic state lawmakers should be doing it as well.
Well, yeah, and why aren't they doing it? That's another question. Why isn't the Democratic leadership, who are the Democratic leaders in this state to begin with, but why aren't they taking advantage of this moment? Because these actions are things that are going to hurt Kentuckians more than anything. These are the big things that really matter.
We're really seeing a vacuum of not only state Democratic leadership, but certainly national Democratic leadership as well.
Right, yeah. Well, that also goes back to, I'm going to raise another name here, and it's the Mamdani,
right?
The candidate for mayor of New York, who's socialist, democratic socialist, like Bernie Sanders, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
And Muslim.
He's Muslim, and he's born in Africa, so he's an immigrant. And the racism that's going on right now, just aimed at him, is amazing. And this is New York, like the liberal center of the world, but the New York Times has already decided that they're going to go after him because they did this big piece last week on the fact that when he was applying for college, he was marking off the box that said he was African American and that he was Muslim, and they were saying, oh, he was trying to get all the boxes. But he explains very clearly that, well,
I was born in Africa.
I was born in Africa. I'm an American. I'm African American. I'm a Muslim. What am I supposed to do? But the Times is treating this like Trump would treat it, like they're going to make him someone who's foreign, someone who's not an American, someone you can fire your racism at, but they're doing it in a way where you can't call them racist. Whereas Trump didn't care.
The other problem here is the conflation of anti-Zionism or just even anti-Bibiism. You know, anyone who is against what Netanyahu and his war cabinet has been doing to decimate the Palestinian population, they're all considered anti-Semites. You know, and it's rich, right? Because Donald Trump just last week at the Iowa Fairgrounds in Des Moines drew criticism for using the anti-Semitic term Shylock to describe some bankers. Think of this. This is what he said. No death tax, no estate tax, no going to the banks and borrowing from, in some cases, a fine banker, and in some cases, Shylocks and bad people. So, you know, Shylock, it comes from Shakespeare.
The Merchant of Venice.
And these are corrupt money lenders, and they're Jews. And so for centuries, this has been an anti-Semitic trope. And what's so interesting to me is the lack of institutional Jewish agencies condemning this statement. You know, right after them praising Trump for bombing Iran.
Right, yeah. And, you know, that also goes back into the fact that neo-Nazis are marching all over the country right now. There was a march in Louisville on the 4th of July. And again, there's this overwhelming amount of racism and anti-Semitism and sexism going on in the country.
And anti-Islamism and anti-immigrantism.
Right, yeah. It all comes from the top. It started with they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats. And instead of people condemning him for saying it, they are just saying, "Oh, this is an interesting political move." And that's the problem with the coverage. It's been, I saw an ad or some kind of little graphic drawn up of a bird with a fish in its mouth, and the caption was, "Brave bird saves fish from drowning." When no, but they describe that as that's the way the American media is covering things these days,
Yeah.
where they're obviously looking at it in a way that makes no sense to the normal person, or maybe it does make sense in their minds, but it's a way to not criticize Trump because they're afraid of getting sued. And like CBS is getting sued, they're going to probably back down and pay out millions of dollars. Others have been sued and have paid millions of dollars. They should be standing up for it, but I think I see what's going on here because the Supreme Court is now ruling against newspapers. So it's just going to be something consistently happening. And let's make a transition here, because I think one of the issues that was raised last week, or one of the things that we talked about in our last podcast, is where do we go for information? Who do we listen to? So I did a quick thing last week, and I had time to think about it for the past few days. And I think I want to add a few more just to my list. My favorite podcast is the Professional Left podcast with Driftglass and Bluegrass. It's a couple who live in the cornfields of Illinois. They're not media people at all. One worked in Chicago government. They went through a lot when Bush was president because they went through unemployment. They went through the issue of trying to get medical help in through Medicare or Medicaid, and they were also very full of anxiety when the Republicans kept trying to destroy Obamacare. But the thing I like about them is that they've given the best description of the Republican Party, and the thing that they remind people of is that things you're seeing today are things that have been happening for years, and you have to think back to when things like this happened, because the stuff that's happening now traces back to the era of Ronald Reagan and Richard Nixon, also traces back to the era of Newt Gingrich, where the Republican attack on Democrats went from being like we're the loyal opposition to they're baby killers. And that's you have to realize that when the right has been inundated with this stream of vitriol by people like Rush Limbaugh and all the hate radio guys, and where it's at the point where parents are deciding to punish their children by calling them Democrats. That's just, it's ingrained in people now to think that this is the way it should be, and it wasn't always this way. So they keep reminding us of the things that Republicans have done over the years, the contradictions in what they say, and the lack of empathy of Republican voters, that it's more about cruelty than it is about being humane to people, or actually doing the things that the Bible says to do. That there's this almost like this new MAGA Jesus, where it's if you saw the movie, what was it, where George Carlin played a cardinal and Alanis Morissette played God, and there was this whole idea of bringing up the good boy Jesus kind of thing, where Jesus is with thumbs up and smiling. But they remind us of where the history has been, and they have this weekly segment called No Fair Remembering Stuff, and they will give us a historical reference to those things. So that's my favorite
Dogma.
Dogma, right? Yeah. The next podcast I like is Acquired. It's the hosts are Ben Gilbert and David Rosenthal, and they're talking about just the business world. the history of a business, and their podcast will go like for hours. I listened to one on the New York Times, and in the course of explaining the history of the New York Times, they explained why Fox News succeeds and how the New York Times partially responsible for Fox News' success. Also, they revealed in the history of the New York Times that the New York Times owner was one of the founders of the Republican Party back in the 1860s when the Republicans were anti-slavery. So, to get these great history lessons on major league sports, on luxury retailers, and on the tech sector. So that's definitely worth listening to if you want to understand business. In terms of Substacks, I read Paul Krugman, who used to work for the New York Times. I still can't believe that the New York Times would get rid of a Nobel Prize winning economist and not let him write what he wanted to write. It just, that makes no sense at all. But that's what they did, so now he's on Substack. Robert Reich, who's a former Secretary of Labor during the Clinton administration, he does a regular weekly podcast, and he's constantly writing stuff on Substack, just noting the horrors of the Bush administration. There's another one. Mark Jacobs has a Substack called Stop the Presses, and it's a weekly newsletter on how the right wing has exploited the weakness in American journalism. He used to work for the Chicago Tribune and Sun-Times, and his stuff is really good. And there's another guy called Jeff Tiedrich who's on Substack. There was a website years ago called The Smirking Chimp, and it was a very liberal website and one that was not shy about using foul language to describe the opposition. And this guy, Tiedrich, goes after Trump every day. And it's like, you can expect 1,000 words from him every day on how horrible Trump is. So those are the things I'm reading and listening to, and I would advise people to look at those if they want to expand their media diet. Because I still look at headlines from various news organizations. I know what's going on when it's happening, but we've discussed this before too, where I'm annoyed at the way, the seriousness of what's happening today, and then turning to a story about something completely frivolous. It's like, are you not aware of what's going on in the world today? So those are my picks for favorite podcast, and yeah, that's for me.
And I would add Heather Cox Richardson to that. I think she's amazing. A lot of us are following her. And
Yes.
I watch Fox News every 3 or 4 days because I want to know what garbage and lies they're telling so that I can try to understand voters better. It's mind-boggling to me, though. But unlike Jesse, I don't spend my time listening to political or business podcasts. For my sanity, I am a naturalist, and I'm out in the woods a lot, and I volunteer. I'm a volunteer naturalist at Bernheim Arboretum and Forest, and again, for my sanity, I have to be out in nature. And so for you fellow nature lovers, I've got some podcasts to recommend to you. One is called In Defense of Plants, and it's terrific. Another's called Bugs Need Heroes. Bugs are very maligned, and they need heroes, and we need bugs.
Well, except for mosquitoes. We don't need mosquitoes.
We don't like mosquitoes. Yeah, they suck. And ticks. I hate ticks. I just got a tick bite, and it's very scary.
But mosquitoes are the biggest killers of humans.
That's true. Every bug but mosquitoes and ticks.
Yeah.
Just the Zoo of Us is quite nice, as is Backyard Ecology. And so, for me, I'm just really geeking out on nature and learning new things. I did learn something really sad about how 80 to 100-year-old white oak trees, and the white oak tree is the queen of the forest. She is like the big producer of habitat and nourishment and all the things. And the bourbon industry cuts down 80 to 100-year-old white oak trees and makes bourbon barrels out of it, and they're used one time. So we've got a real problem, and none of us knows this. Did any of you listeners know that we have this real problem of like chopping down all these old white oak trees for bourbon barrels? Then there's a whole secondary market. Apparently, bourbon, you can only use the oak barrel once, but in Scotland or Ireland, the Scotch whiskey, there's a whole secondary market for these oak barrels. So I learned that. So I learn a lot about, climate change. Yes, it's real, and the impacts on nature, and about trees and shrubs and insects and flowers and soil and water and all the things that we need to sustain life on this planet. And, frankly, I really do believe that Musk and all of his shirts that he wears about colonizing Mars, I mean, he really is. He does. They do not, and I wouldn't just say it's Musk and his new party. I mean, these people want us dead, guys and gals and theys and thems and all of us. I mean, they want us dead. So we've got to step up and fight. We really do. It's up to us. I know that we are looking for leadership, but we've just got to show up and protest and write. I did get a recent letter back from Rand Paul and from Mitch, and they were both bullshit. But I felt good writing to them and making their staff people like respond to me. And they are looking at the numbers of people that are really upset. And then, they're going to kill people. And then, we'll see what happens.
I will give Rand Paul credit. He did vote against the bill.
He did.
And so, I'm sure there was a reason that I probably wouldn't agree with, but I'm glad he voted
all
against
that
the bill.
debt. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a former investment banker. I rated municipal bonds at Moody's Investor Service. The debt, it's serious.
Explain that, please. The debt. What do you mean?
Well, I mean, this big bastardly,
oh yeah,
bill. The bullshit bill is going to increase our debt by trillions of dollars, and we're just going to be paying interest on this increased debt and never get to the principal.
But there is a way to remedy this, and it worked back in the 20th century where you just tax the rich. That
Yeah.
we've been through this era of the super rich who are just going to take all the money and screw everybody over. It was called the Depression in the 1920s, and it's interesting. We're sort of in that Depression kind of mindset right now, and we're in the 2020s. So 100 years ago, the rich were exploiting capital and putting people in poverty. The people had no job protection at all. They had to work 7-day weeks. There were really no unions of any import, and there was no such thing as Social Security or Medicare, and the country almost collapsed. And now we're back to I won't call it the Roaring 20s because that's what it was called in the 20th century, but we're in the 20s again. There's all this turmoil in the 20s of this century,
Right.
and it's the same scenario. It's very rich people doing as much as they can to get more money for themselves, taking it away from poor people,
Right.
and telling poor people that it's their fault for being poor.
Right.
It's not our fault for being rich. So, and you were talking about Elon Musk. He's back in the news again. He's still battling Trump, and it goes back to the Epstein files, which disappeared mysteriously. But Elon has this thing with, he's always been interested in AI and in things like ChatGPT. And he was trying to take over ChatGPT when Sam Altman was forced out last year. But that didn't happen. So what he did was he went to Twitter, bought Twitter, has its own ChatGPT GPT program called Grok. And this week, Grok just completely blew up into this rage of anti-Semitism, describing itself as Hitler, and it was programmed by Musk. So if that's what it's spewing out, then that's what he believes. He just decided he's going to take off the filters and let it go crazy, and that's what it did. And the result this week has been that the CEO of Twitter, or X, has left. Linda Yaccarino only was there for 2 years. I think anybody who was aware of her being hired there knew that she was going to be gone in a couple of years. I was in San Francisco when she was hired, and her Grok was also like making these really lewd sexual references to her as well. So there's the racism, there's the anti-Semitism, and there's the sexism that is the core of Elon Musk these days. So that's where I'm not sure what my point was there, but it's just something that we're putting too much faith in very rich people. And, it's almost like Blanche Dubois requiring the kindness of strangers, where, if you just be quiet, people will see that you deserve to be treated fairly, and then they'll do the right thing. And people won't do the right thing.
But we will.
We will.
There's a lot of people doing the right thing, and right, wrong, morals. It's tough, but I really do think these people are on the wrong side of history, Jesse. It is not good to kill people. It is, and if you're a real Christian, which I am not, and neither are you, you feed the poor,
right.
You feed the hungry.
Well, that's the basis of Christianity.
Right.
It's like,
so
it's in the book. It's right there.
This new Jesus that people are praying to, I don't know. I think
it's MAGA Jesus.
I think you're deluded. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a MAGA Jesus, and it's one who doesn't believe in compassion. It believes that the poor are just a scourge on the earth, and but it doesn't apply to them when the bad things happen to them. And I've seen these videos of people who are like calling for people to get together to protest this administration, and then you look at their history, and they were the ones calling for Trump to be president.
Yeah, but I'm okay with that. Like, I want more people to peel off of this MAGA universe, and before they die. I mean, I don't want you to die, so join us. Like, we cannot let this administration do what it's doing to our immigrant neighbors, to poor people, to black people, to white people, to women. Let's all stand up against this.
Yeah, and let's stand up against things like ICE raids.
So I just heard today on NPR that the budget for ICE now is the largest budget
it's
ever.
The police force budget that's ever been instituted in the country.
Right.
And they were active in Cincinnati, I think, this past weekend. And I think the people who were going back to the neo-Nazi march, I think the people who are in ICE are probably the people we would have seen at that march. And, this whole idea of going around masked, these are probably the same people who were saying that we can't wear a mask during COVID because, you're defiling our rights.
Right,
Whereas,
and the hooded masks of the last centuries too.
Well, if you looked at the march with the neo-Nazis in Louisville, they were wearing like these white cloths in front of their faces, but they're all dressed in the same kind of khaki pants and dark shirts and baseball caps.
Right.
So these are the people who were marching back years ago when, what was the one where Trump said that there were good people on both sides.
Oh, Charlottesville.
Charlottesville, yeah.
These are the people that basically stormed the Capitol, on January 6th.
And who were
and have all been pardoned.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So, and I believe that the ICE people are former January 6ers.
Yeah.
So,
All right. Well, it is tough to end on a positive note. Things are pretty dire, but again, small acts of kindness, get out in the woods, use your 5 calls app, join a protest, do a letter writing campaign. Let's make sure that we get good people elected for the midterms.
Yes, and let's get our Democratic leaders to like actually lead.
Yeah, that would be nice.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll wrap it up now.
See you next time.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Our closing music is by John Chamberlain.